Welcome to another edition of the Anomaly Archives Adventure Club meetup for, well, it's October. It's almost Halloween Eve, almost All Hallows Eve. And tonight we're going to be doing part 2 of, wow, the twisted tale of Willy Seabrook and his flesh-eating zombies. And we are joined again by the originators of the Anomaly Archives Adventure Club meetup, Einida, Excs, and hello, and Viktor Criterion. Hello, Viktor. Well, thank you all so much for joining us again, and thank you so much for putting together this this fun frolic through weird, crazy, scary information. Cannibalism's pretty scary. We laugh, but I hope you all are doing well, and I see that you appear to be in a different undisclosed location for tonight's episode. And I just kind of want to dive right in because I have not watched this yet, because I want to experience it for the first time, like our viewers, our audience. I should remind our audience that you can post comments in the Facebook page where this is at, or the YouTube page where this is at, and I should see them. And if it's a question or a comment, I might put it up in the view screen like so. Oops, is this going to work? Hello, folks. I don't know if that's going to work. Will it work? There it works. All right. I can do it again. Oh, wait, there's another one. All right. Well, okay. What am I doing? Okay, back to the show. Let's go. Unless any comments before we get to tonight's fun and frolic. Okay.
None for me.
None for me either.
All right. Let's see if I can get this going here.
After Willie's first book, Adventures in Arabia, he was asked by his editor, Hal Smith, "What do you want to write about next?" Willie said, "Voodoo." Willie was still searching for altered states and living religions. Hal said, "No one's been able to sell many books about voodoo, but maybe it's an idea." So Willie learned Haitian Creole and went down to Haiti. He was there for a couple months when a government official recommended that Willie go to the island of Lago-Navi to study the primitive peasant life and voodoo that he was looking for. He could stay with a U.S. Marine named Faustin Wirkus, who was stationed there. The arrangements were made. The night before Willie went to Lago-Navi, he was talking to the pilots that were taking him, and they mentioned that Faustin was doing a good job of managing the island, and that the locals had crowned him king. When Willie asked about what types of things he should bring, the pilots explained a few things about Faustin. He wasn't a drinker, and that he liked chocolate bonbons. But then they mentioned that despite those two things, Faustin was as tough as nails. When Willie got to the island, he learned all about Faustin. He had been a breaker boy in the mines of Pennsylvania since he was 11 years old, and Faustin lied about his age to join the Marines at the age of 17. Faustin felt that those 6 years in the mine were a pivotal experience that made being a Marine easy. He was sent to Haiti and spent 5 years working up through the ranks and learning everything he could about Haitian culture, including becoming fluent in Haitian Creole. He became the sub-district commander of Archaea, which oversaw the region that contained Lago-Navi. He visited the island once and liked it, so he was working on getting posted there. Then he met T. Mamen, the queen of Lago-Navi, in jail. She was being sent to Port-au-Prince to defend herself against the charges that she had shown disrespect for the Republic of Haiti and the local courts of Lago-Navi, so Faustin wanted to see this woman in person. Though at the time he had no idea that she was a queen, he could tell instantly that she was a person used to power. She was in a white dress with a bright kerchief around her shoulders, and most importantly, she was wearing shoes. Shoes in Haiti at this time were hard to get, and so they were a status symbol. She was berating the guards when Faustin walked in. He introduced himself, and her mood instantly changed. She questioned him intently about his name and complimented his use of the local language. Faustin let her out of prison that night because she promised to come back the next day, and he felt he could trust her. Then he sent word that she should be treated well and basically educated in what the Republic of Haiti was doing. A few months later, Faustin moved to Lago Nave. There, he was formally introduced to T. Memen, who was Queen of the Congo Societies. The Congo Societies were a highly organized, pre-slavery, matriarchal agricultural guild that had a queen with a court. This sounded good to Faustin, so he decided to work with that framework and bring improvements to the island. He helped rebuild a watermill, and he brought in some pigs to refresh the breeding stock. He made sure that people got to their surgeries on the mainland and helped maintain peace during property disputes. And he, after a time, was symbolically crowned king of the island, with T. Memen as his queen. So why did T. Memen and the Congo Societies place a crown on Faustin's head? About 67 years earlier, one of the emperors of Haiti was named Faustin Wirkus, who ruled under the name Faustin I. There was an old man on the island who was a blind soothsayer, who had seen Faustin I ride off to war on a white horse. The old man always predicted that Faustin I would return. And so the Congo Societies decided that Faustin Wirkus was the reincarnation of Faustin I, and they symbolically crowned him king of Lago Nave in an intricate ritual that included machetes, headdresses, and a lot of drums. This lasted for about 4 years. Now, once Willie's book, The Magic Island, was published and was read by the president of Haiti, Faustin got recalled back to the mainland. The Haitian president was quite concerned that there was a king in his republic. Haiti wasn't big enough for both a president and a king, and so Faustin's time as the king of Lago Nave was over. Willie had written a chapter about Faustin in his book, and Faustin became world famous. The idea of a man becoming king of a tropical island was very popular, so a few years later, Faustin wrote a book about his time in Haiti called The White King of Lago Nave. It was published in 1931, and the foreword was written by Willie. Both Faustin and Willie went all in on the king narrative in their books. Haiti was in the midst of a full-scale occupation by the United States. Faustin's coronation was most likely a symbolic one by a people who were making the best of a difficult situation. That truth isn't nearly as exciting a story as the one where a Marine becomes a king. Years later, Faustin spent nights at the Adventurers Club in New York, telling tales about the time he was king of Lago Nave.
Now, the White King of Lago Nave was only one chapter in Willie's book. He had chapters about many different elements of Haitian voodoo. There were tales about various rituals, processionals, ceremonies, and sacrifices. And there was a chapter about zombies. Willie studied the local folklore and noted that the Haitians had the normal tales of werewolves, vampires, and demons. But Haiti had something so different that it was hard for Willie to fully grasp: the Haitian zombie. The Haitian concept of zombie was that of a soulless human corpse, still dead, but taken from the grave and endowed by sorcery with a magical, mechanical semblance of life. In Haiti, there were powerful witch doctors who could go to a fresh grave and remove the body before it began to decompose. Then they could make it move and turn it into their servant. Willie couldn't understand why his Haitian friends all talked about zombies as if they were real. His friend Paulinus said that the zombies were not merely a superstition, that they were absolutely real. He pointed out that everyone in Haiti buried their dead under stone near their houses, or beside busy footpaths when they could, to keep the witch doctors from turning their dead into zombies. And Paulinus finally said, "When you have seen them, with their faces and their eyes in which there is no life, you will not only believe in these zombies, who should be resting in graves, you will pity them from the bottom of your heart." So Willie talked to another friend, the very esteemed Dr. Antoine Villiers, who showed him the Haitian Criminal Code Article 246. Now Willie, in his excitement at finding a legal precedent for the creation of zombies, miswrote the number of the article and called it Article 249. This becomes important later on. The policy stated that poisoning someone without causing death would be considered attempted murder, and that if a person were buried while in a coma caused by the poison, that would be considered murder. Willie was amazed, and now he needed to see a zombie.
Before Willie left La Gonave, Paulinus found him some zombies. They rode horses to an isolated sugarcane field. There were 3 men and 1 woman working in the fields. Paulinus set up an introduction. He tapped one of the men on the shoulders, and Willie wrote that the eyes were the worst. They were like the eyes of a dead man, not blind, but staring, unfocused, unseeing. And then he said, "I did, in a sense, believe in them and pitied them, indeed, from the bottom of my heart." Willie's experience with the zombies in the sugarcane fields couldn't have lasted very long, and yet it was to change everything. But before we get into that, let's talk about what happened after Willie published his book, Magic Island. It was well received, but there was some fallout about some of the ideas in Willie's book. One of the things that he mentioned was another element of voodoo that had never before been described. He described the ritual sacrifice of garlanded goats and bulls with candles fastened to their horns during voodoo ceremonies. This caused a bit of an uproar among the earlier writers of Haitian voodoo, who said that Willie had made up many of the details in his book. This didn't hurt the sales of the book, but it did hurt Willie's pride. He said, "I have very few things to be proud of, and one of them was that I knew I was an honest, if sensational, reporter."
Willie's tales of zombies and the ritual sacrifice of goats and bulls were verified about 10 years later, when, in 1938, an acquaintance of his named Zora Neale Hurston published her book, Tell My Horse, Voodoo and Life in Haiti and Jamaica. She was a writer and an anthropologist who had read The Magic Island and decided to go to Haiti to see the voodoo for herself. She had already written several books and knew much about the hoodoo of the American South. She had been initiated into secret rites when she was in New Orleans years earlier. While she was in Haiti, she was introduced to a zombie in the hospital who had died 29 years earlier. The zombie's name was Felicia Felix Mentor. Zora took a photo. It was the first known photo of someone who, at the time, was considered an actual zombie. Zora decided to do more research into how zombies were created. She discovered that there was a formula for turning someone into a zombie. The formula was kept as a secret in certain families and certain secret societies. Zora attempted to gain admittance into these societies, or at least to study them in depth. For a time, she delved deeply into the mysteries of Haitian folklore. She learned many esoteric things. But at one point in her research, she got sick and had to return home, forcing her to give up her quest for the secret zombie formula. When she got back to New York City, she said, "Here in the shadow of the Empire State Building, death and the graveyard are final. We have the quick and the dead, but in Haiti, there is the quick, the dead, and then there are zombies."
In the 1980s, research into Haitian zombies experienced a resurgence when ethnobotanist Wade Davis was sent to Haiti to learn more. Wade went to Haiti to find out how zombies were made. In 1986, he published the book The Serpent and the Rainbow about his experience. The movie with the same name is a very loose adaptation of the book. While in Haiti, Wade managed to get multiple vials of powder that he brought back to the U.S. to be analyzed in a lab. Wade was sure that the chemical element of zombification would be tetrodotoxin, which can be obtained from a pufferfish. He was correct that the only consistent chemical in all the batches of powder were tetrodotoxin, but the amounts were so small that the zombification process seemed unlikely. At the time, there were reports in Haiti of people becoming zombies after getting powder onto their skin rather than through ingestion. But no studies were done to see how the small amounts of tetrodotoxin would affect someone transdermally. Wade was criticized for claiming that tetrodotoxin was the main ingredient in zombie making. The symptoms of exposure include numbness, slurred speech, and paralysis, which aren't the normal actions of zombies. Wade also mentioned the plant datura, which when ingested regularly can cause a trance-like state in people. He theorized that datura could be used as well in the making of zombies. In 2020, the current state of research on what the chemical elements are to make zombies are still inconclusive. One of the most interesting things about the Haitian zombie noted in the books by Willie, Zora, and Wade was that the zombies should not be given salt. If they are, the zombie spell is broken. They suddenly know that they are dead, and they become uncontrollable. One of the stories that Willie mentioned in The Magic Island was about a group of zombies that was accidentally given food that had salt in it. This was apparently a big mistake, because the zombies, once they tasted salt, suddenly knew they were dead, and they walked back to their graves and collapsed. Several biochemists have theorized that the zombification process might cause brominism, a disorder caused by eating bromine. The symptoms include stupor, slurred speech, and an abnormal gait. The naturally occurring bromine could be added to the daily diet of zombies. The treatment for brominism is salt, but more investigation is needed.
Now, let us investigate how the concept of zombies changed after Willie's book was published in 1929. It was a national bestseller and introduced zombies to the world. Zombies entered the public's consciousness, but the real pop culture explosion didn't happen until 3 years after the publication of the book. In 1932, the first zombie movie, White Zombie, was released. It was produced by Viktor and Edward Halperin. It starred Madge Bellamy and Bela Lugosi, and it was the beginning of the zombie movie craze that took over entertainment. To this day, you can most likely find this movie showing on a television channel somewhere. The writer of the movie, Garnett Weston, never admitted to reading The Magic Island, but in the movie they mention the Haitian Penal Code 249, the same number that Willie got wrong. The real number was 246. The movie White Zombie was terrifying for its time. The darkest fear in the early zombie movies wasn't that you might get eaten by one. It was the terrible fear of being turned into a zombie, a creature without a will, with the loss of individuality. It was about a person being controlled by another that terrified the moviegoers of the time. Zombies were now a full pop culture phenomenon. There were zombie drinks, zombie comics, and zombies in pulp fiction novels. Zombies were everywhere. The word entered the everyday lexicon of Americans. It became a useful metaphor for a society of people left behind in a fast-changing world. Zombie movies kept showing up in the cinema for many years, the most popular being Jacques Tourneur's I Walked with a Zombie. Until some 36 years later, in 1968, the concept of zombies was changed forever by the movie Night of the Living Dead by George Romero. Whereas the earlier zombie movies were about one person controlling another by turning them into a zombie, Romero's movies showed zombies without a controller. They were a malevolent phenomenon instead of a controllable person. The twist is that Romero didn't make a zombie movie. He made a movie about flesh-eating ghouls. He didn't consider the movie to be a zombie movie. He said zombies were those guys in the Caribbean doing Bela Lugosi's wet work. He had tried to make a movie where the creatures were like the ones in the book I Am Legend, written by Richard Matheson. It's also clear he was influenced by the creatures in the film Last Man on Earth, starring Vincent Price. Notably, the word zombie was never used in the movie Night of the Living Dead. But that didn't matter to the audience. They saw the ghouls as zombies, and zombie became the word to refer to people who have become mindless, flesh-eating automatons. Later, with Romero's second movie, Dawn of the Dead, that he wrote with Dario Argento, Romero embraced the word zombie. He used it in the movie, and he used it behind the scenes when he told the actors, "Zombies don't smile." That's when the idea of modern zombies really took off. They were no longer creatures made from voodoo. They became a new thing with a new folklore, completely separate from the Haitian voodoo origins. From 1968 to today, the concept of zombies has been vastly expanded from the early voodoo element. Today in movies, a zombie can be created by any number of things: radio waves, toxic waste, plagues, etc. With each new movie, TV show, or comic book, the zombie legend continues to evolve.
To fully understand and capture the elements of the modern zombie, we consulted with an expert in zombie movies and were given a list of movies to watch to become fully immersed in modern zombie lore. We faithfully watched them all, taking copious notes and designed forms to capture all the data found in these movies. Then we distilled all that data into this thrilling infographic, which we call the poster. We've identified that all zombies can be classified by their source, means of spread, means of locomotion, their desire, and dispatch method. To create the voodoo type of zombie movie, the source has to be voodoo. The ability to spread the source from zombie to person is none. The locomotion is walking. The desire of the creature is to serve their creator, and the dispatch method is to disable the creator. The next type will happen if we have the source as radiation, the spread of the infection is upon death, the locomotion is shambling, the desire is to eat flesh. Combine that with a dispatch method of destroying the brain or setting them on fire. That would equal the classic Romero-type zombie from the Of the Dead series. Now, if we were to take toxic waste as the source of the infection, the spread of the infection is on death, with a locomotion of sprinting, combined with a desire to eat brains, with no known dispatch method other than completely burning them with fire, which coincidentally will also spread the infection, we get the Russo-O'Bannon type of zombie from the Living Dead series, the series where brains entered the modern zombie lore. But what if we were to take demonic possession as the source, walking as the locomotion, and the inability to dispatch them while they serve their creator? We would get the thriller type of zombie. This poster can be used to identify the formulas for most zombie movies. Give it a try.
Willy Seabrook was a man of his time, a sensational adventure writer who wrote 11 books, a man with a huge number of fascinating friends, a skeptical researcher into the world of the paranormal. But the world, however, didn't wait for Willie to conquer his demons. His career faded, and in 1945, he died of a drug overdose. But thanks to his time in Haiti, and the day when he unleashed zombies upon pop culture, whenever an undead creature lumbers across our entertainment landscape, we will all remember the name Willy Seabrook.
Yay! Thank you. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
So yes, the embedded in the links to the YouTube version of tonight's show, and also we'll post it on the website, of course, and elsewhere is the awesome the poster, and so there it is. Man, so it is such a strange phenomenon that this has become so hugely popular, and so vastly different, of course, than its source material, and yet there are perhaps overtones that people can still sense in today's zombie landscape. From the last, I was just struck by the fact that you touch on the occupation aspect of these tropical climes, these little nation states, these independent communities and civilizations that, of course, get colonized. And of course, there's been much said about Romero as the father of this modern flesh-eating ghoul type. As being not about really doing a horror movie so much as a social and political commentary, and it does make me wonder, like, what underpins people's fascination with this. I think it's obviously as simple as America and Western culture is often described as being death obsessed. Or rather avoiding death, but there's so much death and destruction in our entertainment and culture, and now there's this popularity with the Santa Muerte and this death imagery there. There's no question here. I'm just So what was it about Faustin that first drew your attention? Because in the previous one, you said that it was, I think it was, you said that it was Faustin that kind of drew you to Willy Seabrook.
Well, he was a member of the Adventurers Club of New York. And when we were reading Adventure Magazine and its related things, we found him and started researching him. And then we found out that Willy Seabrook was the one who wrote his biography. He didn't write his biography. He wrote a chapter about him and then wrote the intro to the autobiography by Faustin. So that led us to want to know more about Willy Seabrook. You know, everybody knows that he was the one who sort of popularized and introduced the zombie as we know it to pop culture in America. You know, it had been around before that, but it never really caught on until Willie's book, and then it didn't even take off until White Zombie, the movie, came around. Then it became a full phenomenon.
And White Zombie is definitely one of the better, funner early films in the genre. And some you probably remember but some friends of mine had been for a couple of years at least on their own doing in Houston, Texas, a zombie-thon where they would show zombie movies, and then they morphed it into a more private get-together out in Kingsland, Texas, not too far from here in Austin. And that I just have such fond memories of all the many variety of zombie movies, old and new, and the breadth of style and approach to it, and definitely in the minority as far as the number of films that deal with the more traditional voodoo style zombie. Obviously, we're so far beyond that with most films that people associate with that genre. But so it was Magic Island that had his tales of trying to get the formula, and you were saying that this anthropologist Zora Hurston actually seemed to actually confirm some of what had been alleged to be taking liberties with the ritual?
She actually got in with a lot of the local witch doctors, and so she spent a lot of time watching voodoo practices, and she absolutely confirmed the zombie concept as a Haitian voodoo element, and the sacrifice of the garlanded goats and bulls. And so almost everything that Willie had said in his book, she said, "Yep, I saw that while I was here as well."
Well, I was curious about that because, of course, in your previous part one, there was the whole with his stint with Aleister Crowley, and I think I totally misunderstood about it was Crowley painting the big red graffiti. I somehow got confused and thought it was Willie, but of course Crowley, I don't know if he had a falling out, but he definitely criticized the writing of his friend Willy Seabrook, and so this when this allegation of sensationalism or embellishment or outright faking this data on this aspect of the ritual, that really piques my curiosity, especially when someone who hypothetically is supposed to be a lot more respectable, a professional anthropologist, seemingly confirms that. I kept kind of expecting another shoe to drop, and then she was discredited or something. But I guess the other shoe was that she didn't get to completely fulfill her end goal of looking into it by having to leave. I'm also really curious about the reference to secret societies, of course. Obviously we here in the West tend to think of rich elites, or even just down home, I'm just going to go down to the Freemasonry lodge or whatever and get a drink or whatever. But, all societies have them, all levels of technological society have them. And, it shouldn't surprise us that there would be such things in these parts of the world. And I'm curious how much that seemed to enter into this, or was that just possibly a small tangent, or were you able to discern that from?
For Zora Neale Hurston, she very much got into the secret societies. That was her area of study before going to Haiti.
Oh.
She went all up and down the Gulf Coast, getting into various secret societies and participating in rituals, being admitted into them. So when she got to Haiti, she wanted to do the same thing, and it was a little tougher for her there. They weren't as accepting of her.
The secret societies in Haiti were really based on various families, and so from my reading of Zora's work, different families had different zombie recipes, and she was really trying to get the actual contents and the amounts listed. But then she got sick and was afraid that a witch doctor was poisoning her. And so that's why she left and quit her research.
That was what jumped into my mind, was like, okay, she gets sick. I mean, obviously, there's tons of ways one can get sick traveling overseas, not least of which just being there's bugs that you're in the food and the water that you're not going to be as accustomed to. But yeah, and given the subject matter, I'd be quick to head home just in case. And also, of course, the Wade Davis angle and the pufferfish toxin, and the famous serpent in the rainbow, and there was a pretty big controversy about all of that. But it's one of those that always seemed like there's something else there, some more information that we just haven't yet heard about. But so.
It's not really an area that you can do research into very ethically, which is one of the reasons there hasn't been much research into it.
Just do it on monkeys, right? And other animals. Oh, just piss off PETA.
That's what we need in 2020, zombie monkeys, yes.
Well, yeah, with all the news stories about sugar-addled monkey gangs terrorizing towns that are in COVID lockdown, we may not be that far away from it. So, and I mean, yeah, that's a whole other thing, is just the zombie animals aspect of some of these films. But I've still got a really warm place in my heart for this genre, even though it's so overdone now. And just, it's, anytime, we fan persons become, when something that we're into becomes mainstream, obviously, there's that kind of like, gosh darn it, why, I was perfectly happy not having this be so mainstream. And it's just, it's crazy now how mainstream it is. And I know a lot of different people have speculated as to what it is about this theme. Well, I really thank you so much for this effort, and really, there's so much to go into. I was curious. So, what drug did Willie overdose on, or do we know?
I don't know.
We know he was a very, very, very into alcohol, and so that probably, whatever he took, the alcohol would have been a complication for it. He was so into alcohol and trying to quit near the end of his life. He did a very crazy thing, which was, do you remember what it was, Anita?
Yes. He plunged his arms into boiling water to stop himself from taking any more alcohol.
Oh my!
Because he wouldn't be able to bend his arms to get them close to his lips to put the alcohol.
Oh, wow!
So he was not in a very good place towards the end of his life.
That's wow. Okay, wow. And thank goodness for Willy Seabrook for seeding the zombie apocalypse, and Austin's own Rocky Erickson doing "I Walked with a Zombie," which has been covered a million times by a number of other artists. And but thank you so much for the Twisted Tale of Willy Seabrook and His Flesh-Eating Zombies, parts 1 and 2. This of course, this show and the previous one are archived at our YouTube channel. Folks can go to anomalyarchives.org and find out more about our nonprofit 501c3 activities, which are basically preservation of strange, anomalous science investigations and the correspondence and research materials of people involved in that search. And I know you two are going to continue your search for answers to life's mysteries, and really so glad to have you as friends and get to hear your amazing tales and stories of adventure. So thank you so much, Einida. Thank you, Viktor.
Thank you, Miles.
All right. Well, everybody, have a good night. And I said it during the last episode, but I'll announce it again. The Anomaly Archives Streamathon 2020 is coming soon. Stay tuned.